How do you follow up the biggest smash hit of all time? Well, by making the greatest sequel ever, of course. No, not The Godfather Part 2. We're here to talk about The Empire Strikes Back and the classic toys that it inspired.
A lot of carbon scoring here. Looks like you boys have seen a lot of action.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of our look at the complete run of vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures. In the first part, we looked at what it took for George Lucas to get the original Star Wars made, and the crafty licensing deals he negotiated to make it happen. And we reviewed the first 20 figures released by Kenner in 1978 and 1979. If you haven't had a chance to watch that one, click here to check it out. One of the best decisions Kenner made when producing Star Wars toys was that they continued to release the old figures to toy stores even as new figures and new movies came out. For example, Kenner only made one version of Darth Vader, but this figure was released with toy lines from all 3 movies. This let kids of different ages join the story at any point and still have a chance to collect them all. Speaking of collecting them all, one of the ways that we're able to best define the different eras of figures are based on the number of characters displayed on the back of the cards. Any kid from the 80s knows how crucial card backs were. They were part wish list, part checklist, and they were a staple of line after line of toys. The first Star Wars figures were on 12 back cards, with the second series on 20 backs. But one figure bridged the gap between the toys from Star Wars and those from The Empire Strikes Back. By Christmas of 1978, Star Wars was riding high and could do no wrong. Or could they? In an era before DVD players, widespread cable TV, or the internet, George Lucas wanted to keep Star Wars front and center in fans' minds. What better way than a made-for-TV special? It was an unmitigated failure. Blindingly awful. Our friends at Toy Galaxy made a fantastic video on the holiday special, and I've included a link in the description below. But one good thing did come from it. The first appearance of Boba Fett. The January-February 1979 toy catalog was published in August of 1978 and contained a full-page ad for an upcoming mail-away figure. Advertising for this figure was quickly added to the card backs, blowing the minds of kids just like me everywhere. So while I was saving up my $3.09, tax included, to head over to TG&Y to buy the figures needed to procure those 4 proofs of purchase, Kenner had their own problems. They promised a rocket-firing figure and they meant to provide one. Here we can see some of the early painted prototypes, along with a wax mold of what would become the final sculpt. The first attempt at a firing mechanism is called the L-type, but it was rejected because the spring would fire at any moment. The J-type comes next, and was more secure. Thus far, there have been about 80 L-type and 19 J-type verified prototypes discovered. A couple of years back, collectors obtained a J-type prototype from a former Kenner employee. It included his baggie, 2 missiles, and the mailer box. Kenner was getting pretty close, but despite numerous claims to the contrary, no rocket-firing Fetts made it to kids' hands. In December of 1978, the Consumer Product Safety Commission noted 3 formal reports of children inhaling or swallowing toy missiles from Mattel's Battlestar Galactica line. Then 3 weeks later, a 4-year-old boy asphyxiated on a missile from a Cylon Raider toy. To show just how ubiquitous Star Wars was at the time, the coroner's report actually read, "Star Wars toy put into mouth, missile ejected into bronchial area." There would be no rocket-firing Boba Fett. But the toy we got turned out to be spectacular nonetheless. This is it, my childhood Boba Fett. It is the definition of cool. And the more played with he gets, the more screen accurate he looks. There were 2 kinds of kids in 1980. Those that had Boba Fett and those that wanted him. I checked the mail every day for months waiting for this to come in. So completely awesome. The Empire line proper started with another bounty hunter, Bossk. This lizard creature with the extra long arms and distinctive rifle was my second favorite bounty hunter. The Bespin security guard came as both a darker skinned and a lighter skinned version. The FX7 medical droid is actually the most articulated vintage figure with all of those different robot arms. Next up comes Hoth Han. Yeah, his jacket may not be screen accurate, but this figure has something no other vintage figure had. A little loop on the belt that allowed him to hold his blaster. Why didn't they do this for almost every figure? Such a simple thing, but such an awesome play feature. Our third of the 6 bounty hunters is IG-88. He actually came with a blaster and a rifle. These dudes were spooky cool when you first saw them in the theater. The Hoth Stormtroopers. Who can forget the coolest cat in the galaxy? Lando came with that sweet Bespin blaster, a vinyl cape, and a smirk that says, "I'm up to something." Look, I've already professed my love for Boba Fett, but this is hands down my favorite Star Wars figure from my childhood. Bespin Luke. He came with a lightsaber that fit into his hand, not extending from his wrist, and his classic blaster. I used to keep those old green rubber bands that the newspaper came rolled up in around his waist so that I wouldn't lose the gun or saber. Luke was the hero of every battle on Batesville Road for years. Here's Bespin Leia with another tiny gun just begging to be lost. But dang, girl, check out your fashion sense with that robe. Army builders are always welcome, so here is the Hoth Rebel Soldier. And rounding out the first series of Empire figures is the Jedi Master Yoda. Yoda was blacked out on the initial card backs that were released before the movie came out, in an attempt to keep his appearance a surprise for moviegoers. He came with either a brown or orange snake and his cane, plus that impish grin from when he first meets Luke on Dagobah. The remainder of the figures from Empire would bring the total up to 48. Dengar was our 4th bounty hunter. What kid doesn't want to play with an overweight guy in bandages? I always thought Bespin Han was a huge upgrade over his original figure. His hair looked much more like Harrison Ford's in the movie, although it looks like it might be receding a bit on my figure. Lando's loyal sidekick Lobot had one of the more detailed facial sculpts of the entire line. Everybody needs a pig with a MacBook to run their carbon freezing chamber, so I present to you the Ugnaut. Always loved the design of the Adac driver. His helmet was cool, the tubes were cool, and his backpack front pack thing was cool. For a boys' toy line, we sure did get a bunch of Leia figures. And they weren't peg warmers either. Why would they be, when they look as good as this Hoth Leia? Hey, look who we found. Our next not Grand Moff Tarkin figure, the Imperial Commander. You know the Hoth Rebel Commander is in charge just by taking one look at that sweet mustache. Somebody's got to draw up a back-to-tank bath. May as well be the 21B medical droid. Again, I'm pretty sweet on this Luke Skywalker and Hoth gear. While Kenner never phoned in a sculpt on any of these characters, this one was particularly well done. From the flowing scarf, to the quilted patches on his jacket, to the numerous accessories like the goggles and binoculars, this is a particularly good action figure. Now, if only he'd come with a lightsaber to help him get away from that Wampa. Our second version of R2-D2 is my favorite. He comes with a sensor scope, which pops up like a periscope so that he can maneuver around the Dagobah swamp with ease. Guess who this guy is? Here's a hint. He continues to be not Grand Moff Tarkin. It's the Adac Commander. Okay, so I don't know what it takes to fly a cloud car, but apparently it requires some form of power drill and a space BlackBerry. Also, with that helmet, you know this cat's got a bowl cut underneath. I'm teasing, I really love the twin-pod cloud car pilot. C-3PO's second version came with removable limbs. Probably would have been easier if we just threw them away immediately, because I bet there wasn't a 3PO with all 4 limbs within 48 hours of any kid opening this package. Apparently you need another power drill and Johnny Cash's wardrobe to pilot a TIE fighter. Either way, I'm cool with it. As the final figures in the Empire Strikes Back line, Kenner sets a precedent that hardly any toy company has matched since. They gave us 4-LOM and Zuckuss, the 5th and 6th bounty hunters, to complete our set. How many of us are sitting around waiting for that last Avengers figure we need to complete our collection? These 6 characters use up about 30 seconds of screen time, but they comprise 12.5% of the total action figures produced to this point. That is a level of dedication to completeness that is shocking from a company that still hadn't made a Grand Moff Tarkin figure. 48 figures down, and we're only about halfway through the Kenner Vintage Star Wars collection. Click subscribe so you won't miss episode 3, where we dig into the figures released for Return of the Jedi. Until then, we'll see ya at Carbon Scoring.